They say the frontier is an unforgiving place. In this chapter, Banta faced down a wounded buck with nothing but his bare hands. He chased a panther in a daring fight of survival, and feasted on a bear taken down in the dead of night. This is the story of one hell of a trip through the Nueces Mountains, where every step brought danger, and survival meant quick thinking, a steady hand, and a whole lot of grit.
It was the fall of 1860, and I was 33 years old, deep in the Nueces Mountains, and I was out on a scout, camped beside a cool, rippling stream under the shade of towering cedars. I was tending to 2 sick men under my command. The evening was crisp, the kind of autumn night that makes a man grateful to be alive. I'd shoulder my rifle and take a stroll down one of those beautiful valleys along the Nueces River. After wandering some distance from camp, I spotted a few deer lazily grazing on a hillside. Moving with the patience of a hunter, I crept within range and settled myself at the base of a sturdy cedar. I steadied my nerves, took careful aim, and picked out a fine buck. A big one with a grand set of horns. He was so caught up in his feeding he never saw me coming. I squeezed the trigger, and at the crack of my rifle, the buck dropped like a stone. Confident he was done for, I slung my rifle over my shoulder, pulled my knife, and walked up to finish the job. As I reached down to grab him by the horn and slit his throat, that deer exploded to life. Before I knew what was happening, one of his hind hooves struck my arm so hard it knocked my knife clean out of my hand. In an instant, he was on his feet, and I found myself locked in a struggle, gripping his antlers with everything I had. My rifle was useless, my knife out of reach, and I was wrestling a wild beast determined to skewer me. The bullet had only creased his neck, and as his strength returned, he fought like a devil. He lunged and twisted, doing everything he could to drive his sharp antlers into my ribs. I held on for dear life, barely able to keep him from goring me. My breath was ragged, my hands cramping, and the look in his wild green eyes was enough to make my blood run cold. We went down, then up, then down again. Each time, I barely managed to keep control. But exhaustion was creeping in, and my grip was failing. Then, with one final surge, the buck lunged harder than before. I lost my footing, tumbled backward down the slope, and my hands finally gave out. He tore free, his sharp hoof slicing my leg. As he turned to bolt away, he stopped at the rise of the hill and lifted his huge head and let out a loud roar. I lay there for a moment, catching my breath, too drained to even curse. When I finally sat up, I wasn't in any hurry to go after him again. Instead, I dusted myself off, reloaded my rifle, and retrieved my knife. My torn-up shirt and pants were proof enough of the fight I'd just been through. That night, I returned to camp empty-handed, but with one hell of a story. From that day forward, I swore to always reload before approaching a downed animal, and to fire a second shot if there was so much as a twitch. After my men recovered, we continued our march across the staked plains. One afternoon, we came upon a watering hole, and there, perched in a mesquite tree above the water, was a big panther. The moment it spotted us, it leaped from the branches and took off across the prairie. Without hesitation, I handed my rifle to one of the boys and drew my 6-shooter. Kicking my horse into a gallop, I gave chase, my heart pounding as I closed the gap. When I got within range, I fired, the shot striking the panther in the shoulder. But instead of going down, the wounded beast dove under my horse, making it nearly impossible to get a clear shot. As I lined up another shot, the panther lunged, crushing one of my stirrups and slicing a deep gash into my boot, nicking my foot in the process. My horse reared, nearly throwing me, but I held on and managed to aim one final time. Just as the panther went for my leg again, I fired a bullet straight into its skull. The beast collapsed mid-attack. When I skinned him out, he measured a full 9 feet from nose to tail. That was one big cat. We camped there for the night, setting up guards to keep watch. Around 1 a.m., a gunshot shattered the silence. One of our sentries had fired at something crawling toward camp on all fours. The figure hadn't answered when challenged, so the guard let off a shot. There wasn't much we could do in the dark, so we waited until morning to investigate. At first light, we found a blood trail and followed it for about 150 yards until we came upon a massive bear lying dead. The beast was fat and well-fed, prime for eating. We skinned him on the spot, roasted up some fine bear meat, and feasted like kings. That meat lasted us all the way back to camp, where we could finally draw our proper rations. 4 days on the trail, without bread or salt, had made us appreciate every bite. We'd lived off nothing but the wild game we could kill, and I'll tell you this: hunger makes a man thankful for every meal.
The frontier wasn't for the faint of heart, and Captain Banta through the Nueces Mountains proved it. Out there, survival was never guaranteed. You had to hunt smart, fight hard, and stay sharp. Thank you for watching. If you love these tales of Captain William Banta surviving on the Texas frontier, make sure to like, share, and subscribe so you don't miss the next wild story from the untamed West. There's plenty more where this came from.